Well, Sam, we got done that Jets game and we were both feeling kind of like, "Ugh," and then we were a
Yeah.
little worried about the Dolphins. And leading up to the game, it was like, "Ugh," and then the game happened, and it was like, all right, go Birds, go Birds.
You know, how were we again? I couldn't.
It was like, "Ugh."
Yeah, big. Big win on because we're not talking about the Jets game ever again. We've come up with that conclusion. But yeah, what do you think of the other night? The most complete game. The offense looked great. Jalen Hurts, I think, did a phenomenal job. Now finding out later on that he's been playing with a bum knee for a little bit, but I was pretty impressed by the defense holding Miami to 7 points. Crockett,
Yeah,
really?
I think that's kind of been the story early on here in the season has been the defense and how good they've played. It's a Cat Country 96 Birds recap. It's brought to you by Miller Lite, the official beer sponsor of the Philadelphia Eagles, and by our friends at Banko Beverage. And yeah, it was the speed of the Dolphins and the way that they could trick you with their motion and make your eyes go one way and move
Yeah,
in another. And we kind of talked about we talked about it last week how many different players have played in the secondary and just as all of those things were going on, it made for a little bit of a nerve-wracking game as the Eagles were getting ready to take on the Dolphins. Nonetheless, defense showed up, played out of their minds, really only gave up 10 points
yeah.
with that pick six that ultimately did the Eagles in a little bit. But that defense has been great. Sean Desai has been showing different looks. That front four has been dominant at times when it needs to be dominant. And just a really solid win against who they kept showing who the Dolphins played against and all
That's
that stuff,
fine.
but
Yeah.
they are a team that I don't think too many teams want to try to focus on defensively to try to stop. And the Eagles did an amazing job of stopping them all game long.
Yeah, I don't. I was never a fan of that whole. Well, look who they played. You're only playing who you're scheduled to play. That should mean absolutely nothing when it comes against Phillies or I'm sorry, the Eagles. I don't care what team it is, and the fact that they really played a very solid game against Miami. And that's that whole AFC East thing. Remember, I was a little bit like, why do we always have issues with the AFC East and to beat a dominant team? And I think the Dolphins will be there in the playoffs. They're a good, solid team. Will we see them again in the Super Bowl? I don't know. Will we be there? Will they be there? Who the heck knows? But I wanted to bring this out, Crockett, because I got this when I was in, I think, 3rd or 4th grade. And I tried to fit it on my head, but it doesn't fit anymore. My pretty cool Eagles throwback helmet. I think the uniform had a lot to do. I'm only kidding with the win, but it was just it was cool. It was really cool to see the Eagles throwback green, the Kelly green. I'm good with it for a couple of weeks. I get it, but I want the Eagles uniform now. What are your thoughts on that? I was curious.
Done with it? I have been begging for those uniforms for ever. Mm-hmm. Love the Kelly green, love the uniforms. The only touch that I thought was missing, and this is just me, but when you go back to those throwback vet games, they would have the end zone actually with that gray that's in their pants from time to time. Yeah. That was the only touch that was missing for me. Put that gray in the end zone.
Yeah.
And man, that's big time for me. But yeah, I loved the look. Good to see Julio Jones in some Eagles green. It's funny, the Eagles just put out a video of Jalen Hurts mic'd up for the game, and he was talking to AJ Brown, and he was like, yo, like I saw the 11 going by and thought that was Julio Jones. Like you and Julio Jones are like the identical prototype wide receiver. Which was really funny to see. He only had 1 catch for 3 yards, but
that's all right.
That news came in after we had talked last week, and it just felt like a guy that, look, Quez Watkins has been who he's been. I think we kind of know who he is at this point. I really liked how Olamide Zaccheaus had looked in his time at that number 3 spot. But, man, you're talking about red zone. You're talking about an ability to maybe make what we're talking about. Julio Jones is your number 3 wide receiver. Basically, is having another really good tight end on the field. I think he's going to be a big part of 20 yards and in going forward for the Eagles.
I'm excited. Well, 2 things. Looking at that with Julio Jones, it's like they didn't really need to use a lot of him, which is a good thing, I guess. You look at it that way. But look at those, like you just said, look at those 3 names that you have on the field at any given time, those 3 wide receivers. I mean, no offense to Quez Watkins, but you know what? These guys are better than Quez Watkins, and I'm really excited moving forward. And we didn't even get into the trade that they just made yesterday, Crockett. I'm excited about this. I'm excited. Okay, let's be honest. We were there to maybe not publicly, but we're like, Howie, what are you doing? Why are you grabbing an offensive player? Why are you grabbing a receiver? You need to grab something on the defense, and there he did it. He made it happen.
Yeah, Kevin Byard was a name that kind of was rumored throughout the offseason. Even he had held out for a contract. There was rumors that they might cut him. They ultimately reworked their contract, which works a lot in the Eagles' favor, given that they
Yeah.
did that. Made him a more tradable player. But yeah, I mean, solid Philadelphia kid. Said he loved Brian Dawkins growing up.
Yeah.
Two-time All-Pro, not even Pro Bowl, All-Pro. Hasn't missed a game in 8 seasons in his time with the Titans. So, one of the things that I thought was interesting this week was Zach McPherson, who obviously is
Mhm.
missing the season with an injury.
Yeah.
Darius Slay took him out to an Eagles game, and Nick Sirianni alluded to the fact that they have leaders on and off the field. He goes, you get a season-ending injury, your head can kind of be all over the place, and it's important for the veteran players to kind of step in and help out and be a presence for you, be a leader. He said Darius Slay did that. They had another leader in my mind in Kevin Byard in the back end. Once Reed Blankenship is healthy, I think they've got a really solid
Yeah.
back four there. One of the things that I especially like about Byard is you can bring him down to play the slot. So it'll be fascinating to kind of see if they leave Sidney Brown in there and bring Byard down into the box to play a slot receiver who might be going back and forth. Are they going to keep Byard up top and maybe trust in Eli Ricks, who had a nice game
He
on
did.
Sunday night, or
Yeah.
Mario Goodrich to kind of be in that slot? Just knowing that you have a little bit more of a veteran presence back there, a solid veteran presence, could be important. But it's going to be fascinating to see what they do with him. I think it's a slam dunk. It's one of those trades where when it all comes out and you see everybody saying, like, what did they give up? What did they give up? And everything I kept seeing was it had to be a third. They had to give up a third. Couldn't have been less than a third. They give up a fifth and a sixth, and then Terrell Edmonds. And I just thought, slam dunk by Howie, which is something I feel like we say pretty often around here.
We do it, and no shock of seeing it on the bottom line yesterday. Philadelphia Eagles just about ready to complete a trade, and I saw the name. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me! This is it's only like when Reed Blankenship gets back, this defense is only going to get better. Their front four. The only thing that concerned me a little bit about the game, see if you're in the same area that I was in, is when the Dolphins figure out that they can run side to side on the front four a little bit. I know they had to try something different, but when they started running outside, I was like, I hope teams don't, practice this and try to run outside against the Eagles, because it was working for a while.
Well, they had some success coming out in the start of the second half doing it. And early on in the game, I mean, Hassan Reddick just absolutely held that edge like nobody's business. He just kept sticking his nose in there and making plays. I know a couple of times they had wide receivers trying to come over and chip, which is something that they do often, but the Eagles just did such a great job of Raheem Mostert had a couple of runs there to start that second half. But other than that, I mean, they only had 45 yards rushing as a team. So even with that little bit that they got going there at the start of the second half, it ultimately didn't matter. Phil checks in and says Slay got lucky this time
I see
with that pick.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I don't think so, because if you remember earlier in the game, Chris Collinsworth had pointed out the same exact. It might have been the first drive of the game. I think Jalen Waddle had caught a ball where Tua dropped it in, and he had said, man, they've got two wide receivers right in this same spot. You don't see that being successful often. Sure enough, Darius Slay isn't even the guy that's in coverage at that time on that play on the intended target. He comes off of his guy, steps in front of it, makes a play. Just that defense, I think, is only going to get stronger as the year goes on. Sean Desai with a great game plan against Miami there. Players making plays when they had the opportunities to make plays. And it's been Tua and Jalen are very similar in that if you can get pressure in their lap a little bit, they're going to be a little light on their feet. And they did that to Tua in this game. And I think that was a big difference for the Eagles on defense.
Yeah, I think that was a huge play by Darius Slay. I think that was a very smart play by Slay too. I think he kind of had the feeling where the ball was going to be placed. We were even hearing a little bit in that broadcast too, just by reading it. And Phil, sorry, I don't think he got lucky. Maybe he got lucky because he was in the right place at the right time and he read the ball. But yeah, really excited about the way they played. Looking forward to the Washington game. I don't know. We can talk about that in a second, but really looking forward to that. And then, do you think that I hope this isn't a trap game, because I think every team in the NFL can only get one trap game a year. And I think ours was last week against the New York Jets, looking to the Dolphins. So this can't be a trap game looking ahead to the Dallas Cowboys. Would you agree with that?
No, I would say, well, listen, I mean, they went to overtime in Philadelphia just a couple of weeks ago.
They did.
So there is that to keep in mind. They did not look great against the Giants last week.
Right.
Not great at all. I don't think they're looking ahead of anything at this point. I think there's going to be there typically is a pretty good. I understand that Washington's under new ownership, so there's a little bit of a different feel in Washington right now, but there's typically a pretty good Eagles group that goes down for those games. That obviously plays a role in the game. I think, listen, Jonathan Allen came out after that
Yeah.
Washington game very
Yep.
frustrated, and he was disruptive as anybody in that game against the Eagles. I would be lying if I said that Jalen's knee wasn't a concern. That throw that he had to AJ Brown was a MVP kind of throw. You take the turnovers away, and I know you can't take turnovers away because they're such an important part of the game. He's got to get two hands on the ball. When he had that fumble, he gets his arm hit on the interception. I understand all that stuff, or the ball tipped on the interception, but he has made some play. There's some people out there that still are saying, where's the Jalen Hurts from last year? He's there. I understand. Think about the caliber of opponent they were playing last year.
Correct.
Think about how new it was seeing that Eagles offense last year. I just think that throw to me was Jalen Hurts staring down a defender coming in his lap, throws a ball up that's right. Just, you can't throw it any better than that between two defenders. And that was really the play that changed the game. That was the ultimate game-changing play in my mind on that deep pass to AJ Brown.
How about the last drive the Eagles had to pretty much seal up the game for the most part? I shouldn't say sealed up because Miami got it back with 4 and change left or whatever it was. But that was the drive in general of the play calling on that drive, and how many times I think the Eagles set a record that if I'm not mistaken, for going for it consecutive times on 4th down on one drive and going for it consecutive times inside their 40, whatever it was. With the brotherly shove, we know what play it was. I think everybody knew what play was coming. But, man, that last drive, they just did a phenomenal job. Just so proud of the way they handled the clock and the ball and the play calling. It was just amazing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, a big part of their run to the Super Bowl last year in the fourth quarter. There were a lot of times teams just ran out of time because the Eagles had done such a good job. Teams would run out of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is such an important, and they've done it a few times this year. They did it against Tampa Bay. They've had a couple of those drives where it's the fourth quarter and you're thinking just take as much clock as you can. And they've had a ton of success with that. And, I don't look at that game against the Giants last week for Washington as an indication of what Washington is. I think they're a better team than they played against the Giants. I think they're not as good of a team as they played the first time they played the Eagles. I think they're somewhere in the middle, but you go on the road. That's never easy to do in this division. It's a Cat Country 96 Birds recap. It's brought to you by Miller Lite, the official beer sponsor of the Philadelphia Eagles, and by Banko Beverage Company. So, looking forward to that game against Washington. I'm with you. You don't want to look too far ahead because you know that Dallas is peeking around the corner. You got a lot of help last night in the conference by Minnesota upsetting San Francisco and getting a win at home there. Interesting. A lot of people asking about why there's all the stories coming out that Kirk Cousins isn't going to get traded. Where would he really get traded to? Put it this way, he's got his own no trade clause.
Right.
If you're Kirk Cousins, what really good team could call you that either A, isn't way deep in quarterback money already? You think about the Jets or something like that. They're already, they don't have the picks. They don't have the money.
Mm-hmm.
What team is kind of in a playoff picture that you think Kirk Cousins could be a better Cleveland? They've obviously got a ton of money in on Deshaun Watson. As you kind of go through the NFL, if I'm Kirk Cousins, it's not like if I don't want to use the Eagles as an example. We'll use the Dolphins. If Tua all of a sudden got hurt and they felt like, hey, this is our division to win, we're still there, we want to get Kirk Cousins. Okay, again, maybe not the best team to use because of draft capital, but it's going to be very interesting to see. We're 1 week away from the trade deadline. There's still a lot of things that can happen, still a lot of things that could change. Do you foresee a situation where the Eagles might see somebody out there or a position out there that maybe they are inclined to address leading up to Halloween night?
Well, I think they're okay with you're not talking about their backup quarterback. I think they're fine with Mariota. I think they're okay with Mariota.
Yeah, I'm just using Kirk Cousins as a name that's out there because Minnesota's not great. And he just came out and said that they just came out and said, Devontae Adams' team just came out and said, he's not going to trade. But it's just fascinating to think, there are players that are out there. The NFL trade deadline, I think we talked about this a little bit last year. The NFL trade deadline is different, especially if you're trying to get a quarterback, because you basically have to learn a whole new language to come in and be a quarterback for a team. So unless you're going somewhere where, if you were an Eagles quarterback and you got traded to the Colts, well, that makes sense because Shane Steichen's there. You can pick things up kind of quick. But just if there's any position right now that you think the Eagles might address, or do you think this is a team they're riding this way and we're going to see how it goes from here?
Well, and that's a great question. I think I think they might be done. I think they got Julio Jones. They just got a safety again from Tennessee, and I think that's probably going to be it. If they do one other thing, it would be something else in the defensive backfield. But I think for the most part, they are going to ride with what they have. You're going to get the guys. I look at it as this way, and I don't know if they look at it the same way, but we have a bye week coming up in a couple of weeks. You're going to get a lot of these guys healthy and ready to go down the rest of the way, with the exception of Maddox, of course, which was still a huge loss for the Eagles. But I think they're pretty much going to be wrapping up. But you can't really say that necessarily with Howie Roseman because you really don't know. But if they do address anything, I think it's going to be the defensive backfield.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. We'll see who ends up on the market. It'll be fascinating to watch. If they try to address that slot position, really is the one to me that they might be thinking, okay, are we comfortable? Again, it'll be very fascinating to watch if they see Kevin Byard as a guy that they want to bring down and play in that position. He's done it.
Right.
But do you feel better with him in the back end and just kind of anchoring that defense? We will have to wait and see. Trade deadline is next week. It is a Cat Country 96 Birds recap. It's brought to you by Miller Lite, the official beer sponsor of the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles on the road to Washington this week. How you feeling about that one, bud?
I think the Eagles, it's going to be an NFC East team again, and there's nothing easy about playing NFC East or in general your own division. But I do think the Eagles will play Washington better than they did the first week of the year that they played the Commanders. I think they're going to come out. I think they learned a little bit of a lesson from the Jets game. I really do. I think they're going to come out and really, Commanders are going to play tough. I'm not taking anything away from that, but I think the Eagles come out with a nice win on Sunday. And the nice thing, Crockett, 1:00 kickoff.
Oh, 1:00 kickoff.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Isn't that nice? I know.
It's funny because, of course, ride your teams through the postseason. Let them have their moments. Obviously, the Phillies tonight, Game 7.
Yep.
But to have that Thursday, Friday, Saturday of 8:00 games, and then you're like, oh, okay, I can try to get a good night's sleep on Sunday. Nope, Eagles Dolphins Sunday Night Football.
Right.
Yep. For morning show folk, it's like, yeah.
It's not easy. I know.
It
but
is.
Hey, I'd rather be complaining about the Phillies schedule next week too than just going to bed early.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely. It is a Cat Country 96 Birds recap. It's brought to you by Miller Lite, the official beer sponsor of the Philadelphia Eagles, and our friends at Banko Beverage Company. Sam Malone, always a good time with you, my friend.
Always.
We'll check in next week after the Birds and Commanders.
Yes, sir.
Enjoy the rest of your week. Go Birds, buddy.
Go Birds, go Phils, and have a good time tonight, Crockett. All right.
Thanks, buddy. Go Phils. Go on, Phillies. Go on.
See you, buddy.